Hello! Whoa, man, I surprised myself with that one. How are you guys today? Is everyone excited? Woken up, yeah? All right. I am so excited to be here, if you can't tell. You know me, I'm a morning person. If you don't know me, now you know that I'm a morning person. This session is really chock full of great information. We're going to give you everything that you need to set up a solid foundation for your identity practices. Does this sound good to you guys? Yeah? And we want to leave you with two things. The first is we want to get you as excited as I am right now, if that was possible. All right? So come on, build the energy up. Yeah. And the second thing is you're going to hear me repeat a phrase. Make the system work for you. So we want to show you how you can make the system work for you and how easy it is to get going really quickly. So to do that, we've got tons of best practices. How many of you guys want best practices? Yeah. And we have some terrifying demos. You ready for some terrifying demos? I'm the demo guy, so you can tell. Woohoo! All right, pray to the demo gods. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Mark here.
I tried to tell him this was too early of a session for Adam. It's too much excitement, but they didn't listen. Okay, so real quick, we're going to talk first about getting your user authenticated seamlessly to Azure AD. I know this is something you probably have already done, but we have some new best practices around that. Next, we're going to talk about applications in Azure AD. You'll see a common theme throughout this entire thing is going to be about apps. Nobody authenticates just to authenticate. They authenticate usually to get access to a resource, and usually it's going to be an application. Then we're going to talk about an area that people typically neglect, which is operational insights. And this is really where the value add is that you can provide to your business. And then we have this really good foundation. You can use that to build upon and do lots of cool, exciting things for your end users, which is where the terrifying demos, I think, comes in, right?
That's right,
okay.
That's right.
And then we're going to recap here with some go-dos on one slide. They'll kind of give you everything that we cover, because we're going to cover a lot of stuff today. So first thing here is get your users authenticated. So first you need to choose the right authentication. And we have this really, really nice flow chart. If you're just getting started, to kind of pick which authentication method you should use. And I'm going to summarize it in just 3 bullet points for you. First, use password hash sync with seamless SSO. If you cannot do that for some reason, I would love to hear why. But then use pass-through authentication with seamless SSO. And then finally, use federation. The key thing really here is I think a couple years ago, people defaulted to using federation as their first authentication method. And you don't really need to do that anymore. There's some very specific use cases where you would need to use federation. But realistically, you should be using password hash sync with seamless SSO or pass-through authentication with seamless SSO. And Sarup here, who's in the room, he did an awesome theater session yesterday, 3046, where he covered this whole thing in depth. So check that out. And we also have some documentation here for you with this where you can take a look when you get back and take a look through it. But I want to talk about the first thing, which is why you really should care about password hash sync. The first thing you get when you have password hash sync on is a report called leaked credentials. And leaked credentials is when we work with law enforcement, security researchers, and pull things from the dark web from like Pastebin, and we get the clear text username and passwords from those, and we run those through the same hashing algorithms as the hashes that you've synced from your Active Directory. And if those hashes match, that means there is a valid credential online somewhere that you should immediately take action on by resetting that person's password. So you only get this if you have password hash sync enabled. And the second thing is this may be a lifesaver if something catastrophic happens to your environment, like WannaCry or NotPetya. And if you have password hash sync on and something like that happens, you can flip your authentication mechanism to be against Azure AD. So that means 2 things happen. First thing is your users continue to still work, right? They can still use Office 365, any SaaS apps that are in Azure AD, all continue to work. But more importantly, everyone in this room that's going to be responsible for bringing that environment back is able to use corporate resources to start working on the recovery. Because if you don't have that, everyone will use their personal email addresses. So you will see things like server names, IP addresses, and probably usernames and passwords in people's Gmail, Hotmail, Yahoo Mail. So don't tell your compliance officer that, right? So you want to make sure you have password hash sync on in case something like this happens. And then really, this is a really good time to kind of think about maybe why you didn't get hit by this. Was it something that you were doing, or were you just lucky? A lot of customers I work with, they were just lucky. Just didn't hit them, no reason why. And really, could your company survive an outage like that? Could, like, if a business unit was down for 3 days, could you survive? What if your whole business was down for 3 days? Would you make it? Or about 3 weeks, right? So this might be a huge, huge lifesaver for you in that regard. So the next part here around password hash sync, I'm not going to go into the full details of how this works. You can check that hyperlink out. We have it all spelled out. But I'm going to hit the 3 main points I usually hear from people on why that can't turn on password hash sync. The first thing is they say, look, like to do it, no passwords allowed in the cloud, that's our policy, hands are tied. Is that anybody in here? Has that policy? When did everyone decide that policy? Like, where was I when that happened? Like, everyone had that policy. Crazy. But good news, you're not putting any passwords in the cloud, it's actually hashes that are going to the cloud. The second thing is someone asks, usually they say, okay, well, how does Azure AD Connect do this? Is it like reversing the hash out of Active Directory and then you're putting the password up there? Like, how does this work? And Azure AD Connect isn't doing anything special. We're having a hash here, not encryption, right? So encryption is taking clear text and moving it to ciphertext, and you can get it back out to clear text. A hash is a one-way function. Like, it goes in and you can't get out. That's the whole point of a hash. So what Azure AD Connect is doing is actually has the same permissions as another domain controller. It has the replicate directory changes, those things get replicated over to it, and then it syncs it up to Azure AD. And then the third thing I usually hear is, yeah, but what if something happens to Azure Active Directory? Now the same hashes that are on my domain controller are exposed somewhere and I would never know it. So I like where they're going with this, except for the type of hash that is in your on-prem Active Directory is an MD4 hash. And we take that hash and we add per user salt to it, and we run it through 1,000 iterations, and that's actually what gets stored in Azure AD. It's SHA-256. So if that was to happen, the hashes are not even the same. You have an MD4 hash in Active Directory, and then a SHA-256 hash in Azure AD. Okay? But read the whole paper. We have a whole bunch of stuff on how this works. Those are the 3 things I hear the most common. Okay, seamless SSO. So this is a really cool feature that lets you get the single sign-on experience by using pass-through authentication or password hash sync. You don't need federation for this. You can use this with any of these, and there's no additional components needed to make this work on-prem. You don't need an extra server or anything like that. And we have the full details here on how this actually works, but I'll just kind of summarize it for you, and you can read this later. You're going to add some trusted sites to it, and you're going to create a computer account in your Active Directory for Azure AD. And then this is just Kerberos. That's it. No cloud, black magic, or anything like that. Instead of getting a ticket for a file server for single sign-on, you're just going to get a ticket for Azure AD. So one of the things that we've heard from customers is, okay, I'm on Federation. I got set up Federation a couple years ago, and I would like to move to password hash sync or pass-through authentication with seamless SSO. But to do that, I have to cut my entire domain over at one time. And that's kind of risky, right, Adam?
That's right.
So I think you have a cool thing you're going to show us how to do this.
I do indeed. So how many of you guys are going to go turn on password hash sync right now? On the plane ride home. Thank you, Michael. Thank you. All right, we got some hands. Cool. I love it. So as Mark mentioned, one of the challenges with the current system is that you need to use this big hammer, right, if you want to swap over. So what I'm really excited to announce is that now we've provided the control and granularity that you need to do this on a more granular basis, on a per user basis, in fact. So I'm going to show you just how quickly you can take a user from Federation to password hash sync in real time here, right on stage. This is pretty cool. You can thank Swaroop for this. He's over here somewhere. So if the demo breaks, it's all his fault. Yeah, clap for him. All right. Okay, so I'm going to swap to my demo machine here. And I'm going to attempt to zoom it a bit. And if you can't see something, let me know. But the first thing I'm going to do is orient you to how my system is set up. So this is Woodgrove Online, and I'm here on my Azure AD homepage. And I'm going to show you how I have my domain set up. So to do that, I'm going to click on the custom domain names navigation item here. And you'll see that I have my default domain, of course, and I have Woodgrove Online. That has been set up for Federation. So first zoom it. You can see here it's set up for Federation. Cool. The next thing I'm going to show you is that I also have password hash sync enabled, because that's a best practice, of course, as Mark had mentioned. To see that, I can click on Azure AD Connect, and I can see that I have sync enabled. I also have password hash sync enabled. And I have pass-through authentication. I don't have it turned on, but I have an agent available for me ready to go. This solution will work with both of those, both password hash sync and pass-through authentication. I'm going to demo password hash sync. So next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to sign in with Mr. Patrick F. Patrick is currently configured for ADFS sign-in. So I have not twiddled any bits on him, but my goal is going to be to move him to password hashing right here on stage. So I'm going to sign in with him, and you're going to see that that person is going to go to ADFS. So what we'll expect is when we actually perform the sign-in request, that we'll get the typical sending you to your organization prompt. So indeed, when I go to the Azure AD Security Token Service, you can see that it's redirecting me to my ADFS server, which is proven by this fact here, that I'm hitting fs.woodgroveonline. Cool. So I'm not actually going to sign in, because what I want to do is I want to show you behind the scenes a little bit of what's actually going on here. So to do that, I'm going to open the Graph Explorer. How many guys use the Graph Explorer on a relatively frequent basis? Have you seen the new one? Because it's really cool. I'm going to pop it open here and show it to you. How many of you guys have seen this? All right, so go check it out if you haven't at developer.microsoft.com. And I've signed in with my admin account, Abby Spencer. And what this allows me to do is it allows me to see some nice history of some of the recent queries that I've run. And you'll see that I've run a get on Patrick here. So I'm going to run a get to show you a property that the STS is inspecting to see whether or not this particular user is going to use password hash sync or federation. So I'm going to zoom in here to show you that this property is currently disabled for this user. So password hash sync rollout status is set to disabled. You can see that here. So what this means is that when the STS is actually redirecting, what it does is it looks at a list of domain names, right? And it checks out my woodgrove.online domain name, says, yo, this domain name's federated. Okay, cool. So it's going to, by default, send everyone to that federation server. However, when I change this to enabled, what's going to happen is we're actually going to, for this particular user, use the stored secure password hash that's stored in the cloud. So to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to issue a patch command, and I'm going to set this to enabled. Not disabled, enabled. All right, so I'm going to issue that. If I click your run query. And just to make sure, we see now that that particular property has been enabled. Okay, cool. So this will take about a minute or so. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you that existing sign-ins are unaffected. That's the whole point, right? You don't want to do this on a domain-by-domain basis. You want to do it on a user-by-user basis. So to do that, I'm going to sign in with the user for whom I've not touched this property. And let's see that ADFS is still working as we'd expect. So I'm going to swap to my end user view here, and I'm going to sign out again. And I'm going to just use my admin account. And you can see that I've been redirected to ADFS. So let's sign in here to make sure that it's actually issuing the token as we expect. And indeed, we see that the My Apps launcher loads, and Abby has access to her account while Patrick is being moved over for federation. So when we sign out as Abby here, let's see if the update has made it through the system. Now, when I click on Patrick, what we'll expect is that the STS is going to evaluate like that. So you're not going to see that taking you to your organization sign-in screen. You're actually just going to see the password prompt for the STS. So cross your fingers. Woohoo! All right, that's it. That person is now using password hash sync and can sign in.
Mild applause, I like it.
That's pretty cool. Come on, get pumped. All right. Yeah, thank you. And thanks, Swaroop. So the cool thing about this is that you're not going to have to go to Graph to do this. In a few weeks, you can do this today. You can do this in a few weeks in your organization. It'll be available in the UI and an API for you to use. So please check it out. And with that, I'm going to hand back over to Mark.
Cool. One demo down. All right. So best practices, kind of recap. So first of all, turn on password hash sync. Start enabling seamless SSO and start this with a small pilot. Adam showed you how you can start moving users over. You don't have to do a whole domain at a time, but you can migrate away from ADFS or whatever your federation servers is. And then right, complete that migration. Like, you can really get rid of ADFS. You don't really need to have it or any of your federation stuff. Okay, so next section, SaaS apps. How many people feel this? I already have all my SaaS apps in ADFS. Why do I need them in Azure AD? Don't steal my thunder yet.
Conditional access. What else?
Okay.
Yell them out.
Conditional access. So there's a couple people. All right. Usually there's a lot more. Maybe they're kind of still drinking their coffee. So the deal here, ADFS is just an STS. That's it. It just issues tokens to SaaS apps. Azure AD is a full identity and access management solution. You can do dynamic groups. You can do provisioning to these SaaS apps. You can do self-service password reset. You can do all these different things in this tool that you cannot do in ADFS. ADFS is just an STS. And we have a lot of third-party applications in Azure AD. We're up to 634,000. And actually, that is because of everyone here. Some of my customers, they do an amazing, amazing job of pushing their ISVs to get into the app gallery and working with us. We constantly are requesting for them to join the gallery, but you guys have a much more strong voice in this than we do. So please continue to keep doing that. And it benefits everybody. One of my other customers was telling me the other day that some large ISV wanted them to set up a new sync service for them and then sync it to their stuff, and they said, absolutely not. We've already syncing everything into Azure AD. Let's just do SAML and get on with it, okay? So continue to keep doing that. But, okay, so what are the benefits? The first thing, someone called out already in the audience, security. You think you're going to get seamless SSO for a better end user experience, which is true. But as we talked about throughout this week, if you really want to increase your security, you need to be using seamless SSO, or single sign-on, I should say, sorry. Because otherwise your credentials are all over the place in these different SaaS apps. Like, I don't know how you could possibly hope to control all that and get your arms around that. And then all of these SaaS apps work with conditional access policies. So any policy you have set up today for Exchange or SharePoint can also be applied to these SaaS apps. Identity protection, all of this stuff applies to these SaaS apps as well. Like I mentioned, we also do provisioning and deprovisioning. So Adam and I like to talk about the Timothy API. Does anyone have the Timothy API? That's where there's a guy named Tim that sits up the hall and he manually creates users and SaaS apps for you. Does anyone have that? What about the mystery script? Does anyone have that? The mystery script is a script that runs on a box in the data center that someone wrote 2.5 years ago and they left. And it's written in Perl for some reason. It's like one long line, and there's a bunch of regular expressions in it, and you're like, no one really knows. Am I the only one that's running into this stuff? No one's got that? Okay. All right.
It's just you, man.
It's just me? I'll accept that. Okay. When you have the SaaS apps in Azure AD, you get an integrated end user experience, and Adam's going to show that later in the session. That's called the tease, by the way. And it works with any application. So Pam did an amazing session yesterday. Right? Is yesterday?
I think so.
Yesterday.
Time flies.
And it's been a blur this week. Okay. Talking about all the open standards that we support, right? OAuth, OpenID Connect, SAML, all that stuff. We work with all these applications as well. And it's really easy to get started and easy to manage. I think that's what you're going to show them.
That's right. That's what I'm going to show you. And I want to ask a question first. How many of you guys are using apps with AAD today? Raise your hands. Non-Microsoft applications. Oh, good amount. How many of you guys have set up a federated connection to an application? I love people who just keep their hands up. It's like, I'm doing everything. It's awesome. Okay, cool. So one of the things we heard from our customers is setting up those federated connections. You know, it works, et cetera. We've got the UI, but the UI is a little bit hard to manage, et cetera. And it took some time, right? It took some learning and such. So we've made some big improvements here. We have made this UI much simpler to use. We've also added some cool one-click experiences that integrate with our MyApp Secure Sign-In extension to automatically fill out application configuration for you. So I'm going to demo setting up single sign-on for Zendesk using those new capabilities in just 3 minutes. Along the way, though, I'm going to make a mistake. How many of you guys have ever made a mistake in your life?
Why isn't every hand up?
Okay, there's a few hands not up. Oh, 2 hands. I like that guy.
I want to talk to those people.
Let's talk later. I make all sorts of mistakes. In fact, when I was prepping for this demo, I was setting up these apps all the time. I made mistakes up the wazoo. We've actually built inline testing experiences that will automatically fix this stuff for you. In fact, when I was setting up this demo, I made 3 mistakes I didn't even know about, and I was able to click fix it, fix it, fix it, fix it, and it just fixed it for me. And so I go running over to my friend's office. I'm like, dude, this is crazy. I got to demo all this stuff. And of course, it takes way too long. So I'm just going to make one mistake. And if you catch it, let me know because you're pretty clever, all right? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to Enterprise Applications. This is where I go to manage all of my apps within Azure AD. And I'm going to click New Application. This will load our application gallery, which is where you can go to get access to thousands of applications. And it's also an interface for you to get access to applications that you're developing, any on-premises applications that you might integrate with the application gallery, or custom applications here as non-gallery apps for apps that are not yet in our gallery. And of course, as Mark mentioned, if you see something that's not in our gallery, please let us know. There'll be a link later that you can go to and tell us to add those apps. But for now, I'm going to search for Zendesk so we can get going. Once Zendesk loads, you can load a context pane here, which will show you a little bit more information about the application. I'll go to full screen just so you can see a little bit more information here. And you can also get access to our step-by-step tutorials. So once I click the Add button, the application is kind of waiting for me to configure it. So previously what you'd do is you'd read through some steps, and you'd go to some UI, and you'd take some action to fill out our side of the world, and then you go fill out the SaaS app side of the world. You might make one or two mistakes along the way. You have to kind of fix it yourself. So it might take you 30 minutes or something like that. Well, let's see if we can do it much faster. So to configure this application, the first thing I do is I click on single sign-on. And you'll notice that if you've not seen the screen in a while, we've made some improvements here. The first thing is that previously this used to be a drop-down. It was harder to kind of see what was going on, and sometimes people weren't sure which option to select. So we've actually built inline guidance to help you choose which single sign-on mode is right for you. In this case, I'm going to use federated single sign-on, so I'm going to select the SAML option, and this will load our new configuration UI that I'm going to walk you through really briefly. So if you've used our classic UI, this is quite a bit different, and you'll see that it's much simpler. So first of all, the fields that you need to fill out are called out for you right here. You know exactly what you've got to fill out, and everything is set up in a step-by-step manner. But you'll see two new steps down here. You'll see step 4 and 5. Set up Zendesk and test single sign-on with Zendesk. So this setup experience relies on the MyApp's secure sign-in extension. So you can install this from the Microsoft Store or the Chrome Store today. I have it installed on this machine, and it'll help me actually set up this application. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you that the application isn't actually set up. To do that, I'm going to go to Zendesk, and I'm going to show you that it's currently using the Zendesk option for single sign-on. Just to zoom in here, this is just their default password field. Later on, I'm actually going to disable that, so all we've got enabled is SAML, and we're going to see if it all works, okay? So I'm making the demo extra hard on myself. The first thing I need to do, though, is I need to take the single sign-on identifier and tell our system about it so it knows where to go to configure the application. So to do that, I'm going to come here and fill out my single sign-on URL and identifier. And like I mentioned, I'm filling this out here quickly because I know what to do, of course. If you don't know what to do, what's great is that we have the option to upload a metadata file from your application. If you have it, it will provide that information for you. Or what we'd also recommend is you check out our configuration guides. So this configuration guide is the same guide I mentioned in the app gallery. It goes to the same place. It will provide you that step-by-step guidance and show you how to fill just these two fields. After you fill those two fields, you're ready to go. So let's actually check it out. So you'll see now that step 4 has changed. It's enabled, right? It allows me to set up Zendesk. So I'm going to click on that. And what's going to happen is that we're going to fetch some information from Azure AD, and we're going to ask the person to sign in with an administrator account for that particular application. It's going to pop open the configuration screen, and it's going to say, hey, we can fill out the fields in this particular application. So just to zoom in here, you can read this a little bit. Would you like to do this now? Yes, of course I want to do it. OK, so it's going to fill out those fields. You can see some stuff changing on the screen. It's going to ask me if I want to save those changes. I'm going to do that, and then I'm just going to keep my hands off the keyboard. It'll go back to our enterprise apps configuration, and it says, hey, it's been saved. So the service provider has been configured. I didn't have to do anything. All the SAML settings are there. The certs are there. It's pretty cool. Come on. All right. All right. Now, let's actually see if it works. That's interesting. So how many of you guys enjoy using Fiddler to diagnose problems? We've got, oh my gosh, that's way too many people. Oh.
So where's Ramiro at when you need him?
Any Unix nerds around here anywhere? Yeah, they're probably the same hands, right? I personally, I only do it if I have to. The cool thing is that with our testing experiences, you don't have to anymore. You can actually use it to get insights into what you might have misconfigured in the application. What I'm going to do here before I go into that testing experience, though, is show you that the actual application has been configured and disable that sign-in screen like I mentioned. So I'm back as an administrator account that I had previously logged in, and you'll see a couple things. So notice that the Zendesk option is not selected anymore. SAML has been selected, and I'm going to disable the password capability that I mentioned. I'm also going to do that for my end users as well. So go down here and click disable. So now this means that only the federation relationship is live. So when I click the test button, it is actually, that's the only option it has. There's nothing black magic going on behind the scenes. That's all I got. So cross your fingers. So when you click the test button, you're going to see some new UI appear. And this is, you have a couple options in front of you. You can use the currently signed in user. And we would suggest to do that when you're just doing basic testing. But come back here and try out other users too. If you've got a test user with a different role or something like that, that would be a best practice to come here and try it out there. See if there's any different errors that you run into. Because of course, claims are challenging sometimes, and being able to test with a variety of users is important. So did anyone catch the error that I made though? Anyone? It's a subtle one in the back. What do you say? Entity ID, that wasn't it. Anyone else?
Shout it out. Did not add a user to the app.
You are magical, my friend. If you come up here
Good.
later, we'll give you some free licenses for P2. I'm serious. That's right, I did not add a user to the application. So what's going to happen? I would load it from the STS, and the STS would be like, yo, you don't have a user assigned. Role authorization error. That's how the STS talks in my head, at least, right? Okay, so, and you'd have to figure that out. Oh yeah, I see some groaners there, I love that. All right, but now you don't have to do it. So I'm going to sign in as the current user, and I'm going to see if the system catches that issue, okay? Let's sign in. And it's going to happen pretty quick. Oh, you saw an error. Okay, sign in is unsuccessful. See resolution steps below. Oh, interesting. It looks like I have another application that's using this instance. Well, that's surprising. Let's see if I can fix that. All right, let's give it a sec. So that was not expected, but hey, let's roll with it. Let's see if we can use the system to fix this problem as we go along. I'm going to give it a second here, but as we're waiting for this to kind of turn, you'll see that if I click sign in again, let's see if it works. Okay. Hey, there's the one I expected. Okay, that's nice, that's nice. This user's not been assigned to the application. So the man in the back was correct. Give him a round of applause. All right, so let's fix that. 2 things to fix, sweet. Now the other thing that you'll notice here is that it gives you all the information from the STS, so you don't have to like bounce between screens. It's all here in front of you. And you can also download the SAML request, so you don't have to do anything with Fiddle or anything like that. You can take a look at it, get a sense of what's going on. So just to give you a sense, I've actually downloaded a previous one here. It looks like this. You can kind of see what the claims are doing, all that good stuff. But the magic really comes after the sign-in is successful, because we give you a lot more information. So let's try it one more time. Cross your fingers. Oh my gosh, it worked. Woo-hoo-hoo! The system fixed an error I didn't even know about. I'm serious, you guys. This is not expected. Whoa, that's pretty cool. All right. So I can get more information about the SAML request and response, and I can get all the stuff that Fiddler used to tell me. Check it out. I get all of the claims and things like that. And what's cool is that we've actually enhanced this list. So we have built more claims, more transform rules. The things that you need to move your apps off of ADFS, we now support a lot of them. So 2 upper, 2 lower. We now support new name identifier formats, a bunch of cool stuff. I'd recommend you check out our new UI, check out those new claims, and try them out today, okay? And with that, I'm going to give it back to my friend Mark.
That robot was something else. Okay, so, yeah. All right, okay, so you want to migrate your SaaS apps from ADFS to Azure AD. Hopefully you're convinced if that robot didn't do it, I don't know, nothing's going to, right? So all your migration needs are in one place. We frequently hear this feedback, like, there's too much, this is too spread out, where do I go? Go here, start here, aka.ms/migrate-apps. And in there, we have a high-level migration white paper that kind of walks you through maybe like the process, the different phases you should go through when you're onboarding applications. But then we have also some very specific guidance as well. So we have an ADFS-specific guide, and as part of that, Ramiro and Dave on my team, who are much, much better at PowerShell than I will ever be, wrote an amazing script that you can run on your ADFS servers, and it will output and show you in Excel all of the apps that you have that you can easily migrate to Azure AD today. It will also show you some of the ones that you maybe need to do a little bit of investigation, and then some ones that aren't ready yet. Maybe there's something missing, something more has to happen. But you can do this pretty straightforwardly. Next, deployment plans. These are very, very detailed guidance around SaaS apps, conditional access, PTA, all this stuff. These are all listed in here. Check them out. And then we'd love to hear your feedback about this. So send us an email at aad@feedback@microsoft.com. Things you want us to upgrade or update in these things. And you can go ahead and do that. And I think, Adam, you're going to show one of the things?
That's right. I am going to show some of the output of that tool that Mark had mentioned. And I'm also going to just quickly show you the page that you can go to, Migrate Apps. It's all in one place. Got the white paper first. We've got our solution guide for ADFS, the tool that I'll show you, and a bunch of deployment plans. So check this out. Use the guidance. Send us feedback. I also give some props to Barbara Selden, who's in the audience somewhere, and a bunch of other people who contributed to this. Give her a hand. Yeah? Okay? It was a team effort. It was a ton of people. All right, so now I'm going to show you some of the output of this sample script. It's on GitHub. So check out Migrate Apps, read the GitHub README. It'll tell you everything that you need to do. But this is kind of a good sense of what's going on. So we ran this on a very large organization. And what this is telling me actually is that about 85% of the applications can be migrated to Azure AD. I need to review a bunch of them. But this Azure AD actually supports that. So that's a pretty good number for such a large organization. You can drill into this more to get very specific details about what's going on. So for each application, you can see exactly what problems exist. So hey, it looks like I've got a lot of like issuance authorization and transform rule things that I need to go check out. And you can see all of that at a glance, sort of all in front of you as this nice little grid view to get a sense of just where your problems lie. So yeah, it looks like those transform rules are things that I need to go and check out. You can drill into all of the details of the claims that these things are emitting. I mean, it is extremely rich. So go run this on your ADFS server, get a sense of where you're at, and if stuff is green, move it, man. You can use all this great value of conditional access and this stuff with Azure AD, and if you need any help, please let us know at the email link that we provided. And I'm going to hand it back over to Mark.
Sure. Okay, so best practices around this. First off, go to this website, right? Go to ak.ms/migrateapps. It has everything there you need, including all the tools and things like that. Give us your feedback and incorporate provisioning in your plans. A lot of people like to do provisioning like after they've migrated the app or after they've onboarded the app. You don't want to do that. You want to do that as part of the onboarding of the application. Check out our deployment plans. Right now, Paresh in the front row is very happy that I have this URL up on the screen for everybody, so please check this out before he has a heart attack. And then next, Adam showed the My App Secure sign-in extension. You can get this in the Google Chrome store and the Windows store as well for Edge. Check it out. It makes your debugging much, much easier unless you really, really like using Fiddler. And then if you need an app, please let us know. Go to this link, ak.ms Azure AD app request. Okay, operational insights. So I know everyone got into IT because they like operational insights, right? But really, this is where the value add is that you can do to your business. So start by using these metrics about these authentication and these applications. And simple thing is like, are you using what you're paying for? Like, did you buy 10,000 licenses of something and you're only using 3,000? Do we need to renew all 10,000? Or is a business unit using much more than they thought we had allocated for them? You can do that with this data, and we're going to show you how to do that. Next, what is happening in your environment? I kind of call this looking for trouble, where you're kind of looking through like maybe some errors in the logs and things like that, but maybe even something as simple as, hey, this user normally only signs in from this location. I'm seeing them log in from a bunch of different countries. That looks really suspicious for me. And that actually might be a security incident. And now, maybe this is just me again, but every time I help a customer with a security incident or something, there's like the data is everywhere. So like we pull the first set of data and it's in UTC, so that looks good. And then we go to pull the logs off the ADFS server, but that thing wrapped like 2 days ago, so that's dead, right? And then we got to go to the client machine in Phoenix and we pull that, but it's like in daylight savings time, but like do they respect it or not anymore? I can't remember. And
Dude, you're blowing my mind. Get out of here.
You spend all the time like trying to get the data to look right? Like this, before you even do any investigation, you're trying just to get the data in the right spot. And this can be a big deal because you need to be able to tell who was actually impacted. Because that's the first thing management's going to ask is who was impacted. But even more important, if there's been some sort of data disclosure and you have to publicly talk about what happened, if you cannot say specifically who was impacted, you might have to say everybody, right? So if you don't have that data to say only these 20 people were impacted, you might have to say all 20,000 people were impacted. And next, this is a real quick win. You can use this as a jumping off point for the rest of the stuff we're going to talk about, which the first thing here is Azure Monitors. Anyone used Azure Monitor yet? Some people, pretty cool. So Azure Monitor really is this unified monitoring platform where you can pull all your logs in from like IaaS and different, all the Azure services, and now Azure AD also is in that. So your audit logs and your sign-in logs can also go into Azure Monitor. And you can use that to do some rich insights, which Adam's going to show you using log analytics to kind of look through this different data and do some correlation. But we also know that people have on-prem SIEM systems where you're pulling all your data from like maybe your networking equipment and things like that, and you want to pull that in there as well. So you can actually, it's much, much easier to import this data into your SIEM now than it was before. So how to set this up, a couple things you got to do, and we're going to walk through this. First thing you're going to do is create an Azure storage account. Next, you're going to enable the Event Hub, and you're going to send the data to Log Analytics, and that's it. Really easy. It's like 4 clicks, right?
It's quite easy.
And like I said, we have some SIEM integration. So who here has their SIEM already pulling from Azure AD today? right? You have like the multiple like graph API endpoints you had to hit, right? And then it's like repulling. You don't want to double the data, so you got to like filter it all out, and it's super painful. So Sumo Logic, Splunk, and ArcSight have built-in connectors into Azure Monitor. You can literally set this up in a few minutes, and the data will start flowing in, and you're good to go. Last part here, log analytics. So maybe you hate your SIEM team. Like, I don't know, there's all those like weird IT Hatfield McCoy things that just go on forever. You can use log analytics yourself to look through this data and start performing some of those insights. But this is probably better shown than like talked about. So Adam's going to talk about or show you some of this stuff.
That's right. So Mark had mentioned that the previous experience was you had to configure a bunch of stuff, slurp some data. The data's all there for you, but now we've made it a lot easier to get access to it. So I'm going to show you just how cool log analytics is with a few demos here. I'm going to show you how to set it up, and I'm serious, data flows in like 10 minutes. Mark, how many help desk tickets can you rerun in 10 minutes?
Many.
Many, yes. So 10 minutes is a very short period of time. So what we're going to do is we're going to show you how it's set up, and then I'm going to run some ad hoc queries to show you how easy it is to visualize data and get a good sense of things. And I'm also going to then show you some of the dashboards that I've created, and we're going to use one of those dashboards to troubleshoot a common issue. So this is our kind of classic sign-ins experience that you can see. Of course, you can download the data and do some operation against it. It's pretty solid. But what I'm going to show you now is how to set up this cool new log analytics stuff. So you'll see this new option here called Diagnostic Settings. This is where I start by configuring my data flows to the different sources that Mark had mentioned. So I'm going to drill into one of these data flows and talk you through it. So you come here, and the first thing that you'll notice, if I use my handy-dandy Zoom it here, is that I am pulling data from my audit logs and my sign-in logs. Okay, so this means that this is the source of my data. I'm going to pull the data from these things, and you can also see that you can set a retention period. So a retention period of 0 days does not mean 0 days. It actually means infinite. So that's one big benefit of this, is that you can control how long it's retained. If you want to keep it forever, go ahead and keep it forever. If you want to keep it for a year, keep it for a year. It's up to you. So that's a pretty cool thing that we now support. And in addition to that, you'll see if that's the data source, if that's the data source, where are we actually sending it? Well, we're sending it to 3 places. We're sending it to a storage account. That's the first one. We're sending it to an event hub, and we're sending it to log analytics. So the rest of this demo is going to be focused on log analytics, but by streaming it to an event hub and a storage account, you can actually connect your SIEM tools, as Mark had mentioned. So log analytics has this concept of a workspace. So you set up workspaces for the different types of operations you want to do. So I've set up one for my Azure AD logs. So now I'm going to drill into that workspace and show you how we can run some cool ad hoc queries to get some insights about both sign-ins and audit. So to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to exit from the diagnostic settings view, and I'm going to click into this logs view here. This logs view is going to load the log analytics log analyzer. I don't know how many times I can say analytics, but it's a lot. And what you'll see here is that there is a few things I'm going to orient you to. So first of all, there is a schema inspector. So one quick best practice is once you start flowing data here, go to the log management section here of your workspace, and you'll see audit logs, all of the columns that the audit log supports, as well as some information about them, and sign-in logs. That's the change that we just made by setting up that diagnostic settings that I had mentioned. So let's take a look at a very, very simple query that just returns sign-ins from the last 7 days. And I'll show you some best practices as we go along. So one quick best practice, of course, is to just start by running a basic query like this. It'll give you a good sense of the data format and things like that. And you'll also notice that some columns are not selected by default. So you can come here and click the Select All option to pull all of that information so you can see everything right in front of you. The other thing you'll notice is that no longer do you have to do textual operations against this information. You can actually expand each one of these rows and see lots more information about that specific row. Now, one of the things that I really liked about this as I was working through this demo was the ability to use dot syntax. If you don't know what I mean, location details dot city, or location details dot state would refer to that option. How many of you guys, would do things like, stream editing or something like that to pull this data in the past, like splitting or something? Well, you don't have to do that anymore. You just reference the object that's stored in the JSON object, and Log Analytics does all the heavy lifting for you, so it's pretty cool. So let's see what some of that heavy lifting can do by running a little bit more of a complex query. So I'm going to take the same base query, sign-ins from the last 7 days, and I'm going to add some information to it. So I'm using that dot syntax here. If I zoom in, you can see, not Control 2. Control 1. You can see that I'm referencing that location details.state as one of the columns. And when I actually zoom out, you can see that I'm pulling basically all the sign-ins to which applications, which users are signing those applications, and which states they're coming from. Now that's pretty cool, but what's even cooler is that look at how fast it is to get visualizations. If I want to see something, I can just click on chart and it's already visualized for me. So let's check out this pie chart here, and notice I can already get insights. Okay, 37% of my sign-ins in the last 7 days were to the Access panel. Let's pivot that. Looks like T. Perkins signed in 49% of those times. Let's pivot that. Looks like Nevada in Georgia is very popular. Let's pivot that. You get the sense, right? So previously, you had to do all these visualizations yourself. Yeah, give me some applause. All right. It's not me, it's the team who built this. It's pretty cool. All right, so now let's run a query against our audit logs just to see what's possible with that. So it's a pretty common thing to be like, hey man, what's this person been up to? Like I saw some kind of strange operations in the logs. I'm just gonna pull everything that this person has done in the last period of time. So what I'm going to do that is I'm going to look for all audit logs in the last 30 days where user principal name contains T. Perkins. And if I run that, I've actually pulled some important columns here that you will see showing up in our best practices slide. Category, result type, operation name, initiated by, target resources. Those are all interesting columns to check out in the audit log. It's a best practice. You'll get some more details on that later. You'll also see that I'm aggregating here. So I'm aggregating on time generated over an hour-long slice. So what's cool about this is if I showed you static data in the previous one, this is going to show you data over time. So what does that look like? Well, first of all, we can see that that person's been doing a ton of core directory operations, but let's actually see when those operations are occurring. We can click on chart again, and this time we'll use a line visualization, and we'll do our fun pivot operation to see a little bit more information about what these people are doing. So it looks like there's a lot of operations about adding role assignment grants to these, adding role assignment grants, and if I go to the time view again and I pivot on other things like operation name, you can see over time exactly what this person is doing. So if you hover over this, for example, on the 18th, it looks like this person deleted 16 access reviews. Well, that's maybe a little suspicious, so maybe I go knock on this person's door with my baseball bat and figure something out. Okay, so with that, this is pretty neat, but the other cool thing that you can do with log analytics is create dashboards. This is an example of making the system work for you. Come on, you guys.
You nailed it.
All right?
Nailed it.
Nailed it. All right, so to make the system work for you, one thing you can do is you can save all these queries. You'll create a great, folder of these queries. You can start using them and stuff like that. But the real power comes about creating dashboards for those queries. So I'm going to go to a new tab here, and I'm going to actually show you the actual log analytics experience itself. You can get to this by going to all services and searching for log analytics, which is down here. And this is just the same workspace that I showed you earlier. So I'm going to drill into this workspace, and I'm going to show you some of the dashboards that I've created. Now, I kid you not, I had no idea how to create these dashboards. I just knew how to run some of these queries and try it out. I created a dashboard with some overview tiles in like 30 minutes. It's pretty cool. All right, so I'm going to show you that by clicking into the workspace summary view here. And you'll see that this whole dashboard is filterable. So like if I want to see information over a different time period, I just repivot it. But like I said, let's see if we can troubleshoot some issues with this dashboard. So I'm going to drill into this account provisioning events failures because that looks a little suspicious to me. And when I drill into it, I get into an even more rich view, which shows me all the different successful operations and failed operations for new users that have been provisioned, users that have been updated, and users that have been deprovisioned. And if I want to see this over a longer period of time, I can just pivot it and apply, and the view updates right in front of me. So that's pretty rad. But let's actually use it to see if we can fix an issue, right? Because that's where the real value comes into play. So you can see that each of these things is drillable. What's neat is that when you drill into them, you actually drill into the specific query context for that exact row. So in this case, we're going to drill into the actual Salesforce provisioning errors, and we're going to see if we can figure out what's going on here. So while this loads, you'll see that this is the same view that we had showed you with the ad hoc queries. But if we expand one of these rows, we can actually take a look at what's been going on. And it says, failed to create user J. Woods. Active Directory cannot provision more users to Salesforce on your behalf because the user license limit has been reached. Okay, well that's pretty specific, right? And if you go read further in the error, it gives you a couple options. You can buy more licenses, or you can assign the user to a role that does not require licenses. So these are great examples of how the system can really be built up so that you can come into work and make sure that you're able to get your job done without having to go and twiddle around with all these logs. It's all right there in front of you. And in the next demo, we're actually going to use it to investigate some suspicious activity because we are making the system. Yeah, all right, you're going to get louder over time.
Nailed
it's going
it
to be great.
again.
All right, back to Mark.
Okay. Okay, so some best practices around this. First of all, it's really, really easy to set these up and send your logs to Azure Monitor. And please, please integrate your SIEM tool with this now, before you have an incident. And then start using the Azure AD Log Analytics. So Adam threw up some query tips for you up here, so when you're looking at this later, but start messing around with this. You'll find all kinds of interesting data in here. Okay, so maybe you don't have a SIEM solution. No problem, we got you covered. So we have this awesome thing called the Power BI Content Back for Azure AD. And this thing is manager catnip. It has everything managers love. It's got charts, it's got colors, it's got maps. And when I say it out loud, I realize I'm also probably describing a third grader, which also may apply to your management. But
yeah, that's a good one.
all right. No, seriously, seriously. This is super easy. You can do this on the plane. Like, do this, start looking at this data. You can show them when you get back on Monday, like, hey, look at all this stuff that we're doing. I want to spend more time on this, and you can start digging into the more advanced stuff like the log analytics thing. So please, please go do that. Okay. Now you got all this set up, what can you do? So first thing, security, right? That's like one of the most important things. So now that you have password hash sync on, you should be looking at the leak credentials report and figuring out whose password needs to be reset immediately. Next, we didn't really talk about it here, but there's something you really want to spend some time on, which is legacy authentication sign-ins. If you're not familiar with this, we fought and we were able to sneak in one more session into the very coveted Friday morning after the party slot, okay? Very hard to get, very hard to get. So Tarek on my team and Sean are going to spend like a real deep dive on legacy authentication sign-ins. I know some of you people already maybe have your flights out of here, but please make sure you check this thing out. Next, you can go through some permission remediation and look to see maybe some apps have maybe more permissions than they really need, and we can pull some of that back. Protecting your admin accounts. So Steve and Justin from Dow Chemical yesterday did a great session about how they're using privileged identity management in their environment. If you're not doing this today, start looking about doing this. ak.ms/breakglass will give you all the steps to walk through how to deploy this in your environment. And finally, right now, if you're thinking to yourself, boy, I would like to hear Mark talk for another 75 minutes today, you are in luck. Immediately after the session, I'm going to take this microphone off and head up to the theater to talk with Nitika about shutting the door on cybercrime and giving a lot of best practices around security things that you should be doing. So I think Adam has a demo, kind of like maybe your typical workday.
That's right. So, now that you've set a great baseline for operationalizing your system, I had to practice that word like 8 times to get it out, by the way. Let's see what the system can do for you. So I've actually taken some of those dashboard views from Log Analytics and I've pinned them to my dashboard. So let's imagine that I come into this every single day and I see, wow, there's a lot of sign-in failures going on. What's happening? So one thing that we would suggest in this case is, hey, go check out identity protection. Maybe there's some alerts there that you can take a look at. So I'm going to do that now. And when I swap over there, I get to there by clicking on the identity protection view in my navigation item, by the way, if you didn't know where this was. And immediately on the overview page, I see something. One user has a high risk level. Okay, that's a red flag. So let's drill into this and see what's going on. So through this demo, I'm actually going to go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into the system until I get to the root cause, and then I'm going to remediate it. So I'm showing you how you can walk through the system and figure it out. So hey, it looks like Edward Huntington something's going on with him. So I'm going to drill into this person and take a little bit more, a deeper look here. So I can look into his actual risk events, and I see 3 high risk events. And oh my gosh, there's a bunch of leaked credential events here. Okay, this user is now on my list. It's like Richard Nixon's list for security incident managers, okay?
A timely reference.
Very timely, yes. You can see where my head's at. So how do we investigate Edward further, though, right? Well, a natural thing to do would be to see what kind of applications Edward has been using. So to do that, I'm actually going to go back to my dashboard and show you another view that I've built. So maybe, one of the things that I like to monitor is, what are people doing with consent in my organization? You guys know all of the interesting stuff going on in the world today with malicious consent applications. It's something that's top of mind for privacy, et cetera. So I've actually taken it on myself to build a view of consent operations in my organization. And let's see if Edward shows up there so we can go deeper into the system. So I'm going to go back to my dashboard to show you that view. Oops, wrong way. And indeed, when I see my dashboard here, users performing consent, and I see Edward's name show up there. So first of all, I see there's a leaked credential event. I saw a bunch of sign-ins from unfamiliar locations. And now I'm seeing that this user is performing end-user consent operations. So let's drill into this and see what's going on. So this is the dashboard, by the way, that I created in about 30 minutes. It's pretty cool. So first of all, you'll see here I have a view of all the different permissions that have been granted by user consent in my organization. And I already see something that's a little bit suspicious to me. I've granted some permissions to Exchange Online, and these are permissions coming from an application that I don't necessarily expect, like not a first-party Microsoft application. So I'm already kind of like, my spidey senses are tingling. And I can see that this is occurring over a relatively long period of time. And I can also see that there's this one application that's showing up for consent, this timesheet application. And look, Edward's name shows up there. But also some other names are showing up there as well. So could it be that Edward created some application and is now getting people to consent to it? Well, that could be. So I want to investigate this application a little bit further. So to do that, I'm actually going to see if Edward still has access to the app. I'm going to go to Edward's user account, and I'm going to look at all the applications that are currently assigned to him and see if this application shows up. It could be that this application is no longer being in use or somebody took care of it, but I want to check it out to be sure. So I'm going to swap over to Edward's user view here. And to do that, I'm going to come to the root navigation path of Azure Active Directory, click on users, and I'm going to search for Edward's name. So I'm looking for the confluence of Edward and the timesheet application, and then I'm going to go from there. So where do I do that? I search for Edward. I load him up. And you'll see there's this applications navigation item on the left-hand side. These are all the applications that this person currently is assigned to or has access to. And it gives you a lot of information about what's actually going on. The whole list is searchable, filterable, of course, and you can drill in to get information about the application itself. And immediately we see at the very top timesheet showing up. And if it didn't show up, of course, we could just filter this list down to the thing that we're searching for. So let's drill into this. Well, this gives me a bunch more information, tells me things that I could use to look up the application PowerShell, for example. But I also see that these permissions were granted through user consent. Okay? So this is suspicious to me because I'm very wary of user consent operations. I want to control those as an admin, so I'm going to look into this. To look into the app directly, I can simply click on the application here, and it will drill me into that application for me to do further investigations. So I see those same users assigned to the application here, right? The same users I saw in my audit view that I built on the back of Log Analytics. So I want to look into what permissions this application actually has. I click on the permissions view, and I see that there are no admin consented permissions. So this means that there's no admin who kind of has said bless this application, right? It's all end users doing stuff, which is something that I'm concerned about. So I drill into this view, which is something that we have now recently added, and I can see all of the information about what consent grants have actually been given to this particular user. And I can drill into those to see more information about those particular grants. So if I scroll up here, you can see all of the actual properties for that consent type and allows you to inspect it and understand it further before making a decision. What we've heard from customers, though, is sometimes it's hard to know just how to actually take action on this, right? Okay, well, I see this, but now what do I do? Well, this is where we've built a new experience. We've built this review permissions experience, which gives you inline guidance on what action to actually take based off of what you've noticed. So you'll see a few options here. Basically, in order of increasing severity. Hey, I just want to control access to the app. The app has more permissions than I expect. The app is suspicious, and I want to investigate before allowing users access. I still think the app is okay. Or hey, I think this app is malicious. I just want to nuke it from orbit. All right? So I'm going to choose the nuke from orbit option, of course. But what I would suggest is that follow your incident handling procedures, okay? So as you know, nuking it from orbit, disabling something like that, if it is something that you want to kind of use as a honeypot or something like that, you're immediately going to trigger in an attacker's mind oh, they've done something with this app. So please follow your organization's incident handling procedures. My demo incident handling procedures, of course, are to do the most interesting thing. So if I select the application is malicious and I'm compromised, it provides very specific steps. It says, okay, disable the app, all right? So for this instance, I would start off by doing that. But you can also see that we've actually built PowerShell scripts for you that do specific operations. The first one here removes all users assigned to the app. The second one revokes all those permissions. And the third one then revokes all of the refresh tokens for those users. So let's actually do that and see if the application is updated here in real time. I've simply taken those scripts and pasted them here. And I'm going to open PowerShell and sign in with an admin account and actually run all of that. So like that, I'm just going to control the app, and then I'm going to disable it and see if users can sign in after that. Of course, PowerShell takes a moment to load. How many of you guys have the PowerShell extensions installed right now? Oh, you are. Thank you, sir. I've got a friend in the audience.
Good eye.
All right, so connect Azure AD is the first step that you do. Azure AD. Not Azure AD, you did it? Okay. And it will ask me to sign in. So I'm going to sign in with an admin credential. And I'm just going to dump my paste buffer here, and it will run all of those commands. All right, so the first is it's going to revoke all the permissions. The second is it's going to revoke all the refresh tokens. And the third is going to remove all the assignments. Now, the reason you want to do the refresh token revoke second is because you need to look at the assignments to know what users to revoke the tokens for. That's why I ran that script second. So that's a best practice for you to keep in mind. Now, what our expectation is if we go back to the application, there are no more consents for this app under user consents, and there are no more users assigned. So let's actually refresh the page here to see if that's the case. And somehow I went to dark mode. Oh my gosh, that's interesting. And look at that, if we go to user consent, there are now no consented permissions, and if we go to overview, all of the users are no longer assigned. The only other step to take here is go to properties and set enable for users to sign in to off. And we have successfully investigated and remediated a suspicious application using the power of the system. Woohoo! All right. And I'm going to hand it back over to my friend.
Okay. So that was really interesting from a security standpoint, but there's some other things we probably kind of should talk about. Your system, your users should love to use this system. So one of the things here is you can launch an application from anywhere, even if the app is on-premise. How many people here are using Azure AD Application Proxy? That is far too few hands. Is everybody aware of it? No. Okay. So Azure AD Application Proxy lets you take internal web applications and publish them outbound through Azure AD like any other SaaS application. You can apply conditional access policies to them. You can, so like, let's say we've lost the source code to that web app, right? Like, who knows where that is? And we want to add MFA to it. You can do that with Azure AD conditional access with App Proxy. Next, you can really allow your users, like, you can kind of get out of the way of the business, right? So you can let users add their own applications, or even better yet, delegate access control to your business. So, like, it shouldn't be a change ticket every time someone needs to get added to Salesforce, right? Like, you can delegate that out to the business unit. They can add the users automatically to that and get them provisioned. So you don't need to do that. You can focus on all this other more interesting stuff. Groups. Everyone's groups are like super clean, right? In this room? Like, real good? Okay, well, this will be for the people online whose groups are dirty, right? So you can clean all these groups up with access reviews. That's a new feature we have, where you can kind of have people either self-attest saying, like, I still need access to this application, or you can have the admin go through and say, nope, these people don't need access anymore. You can automatically remove them from the group. And you're going to show them, this is the last part, right? This is the last most complicated part?
That's right. So now that the system is working for you, of course, as I've taught you so well, what can you do with it? How can you set it up to be maximally awesome for your end users, right? How many of you guys have end users launching apps today through Azure AD? Hands up. Come on. This should be like everyone. Okay. Well, let's get more of that going on, of course. You know, for those of you who are using apps launching, one of the things that we've noticed is that users expect apps everywhere where they do work. It could be from our My Apps extension. It could be launching from office.com. It could be from a mobile device. It could even be from a start menu item that you push down using mobile device management. The point is that users access URLs and web apps everywhere, right? It's just the human condition these days. And how can we set up the system to really work in that mode? Well, it's our goal to really meet users where they are. That's how we want to set up our system. And so I'm going to show you that through the lens of Phoebe Tyler. Phoebe is the high-powered CEO of the F128 photography organization. And now let's put ourselves in the place that she's traveling on business, she is in Kuala Lumpur, and she has just opened the laptop lid of her Azure AD domain joined PC. And she signs in with her credentials, which I thought were in my paste buffer, but are not. And the first thing that she wants to do is she wants to do some expenses because she's been traveling for a while and she needs access to the Expenses app. Now the Expenses app is running inside of her corporate network. So in the classic world, what would you have to do in this case? Hop on a VPN, get a tunnel, wait for the VPN to like do its IPsec magic, hope it works. Oh, you're in Kuala Lumpur? Oh, timeout. Okay, see you later. And so to show you what that would look like, I'm just going to show you, I have an internal URL, expenses.f128.info. That's not a non-routable URL. So if we load that from, because we're not actually on a VPN or anything like that, oh shoot, you saw my password. You didn't see that, just kidding.
Oh.
If we load that from a internal URL.
I feel bad for the people using this demo environment after us.
You'll see, of course, that the site can't be reached because it can't route there. Okay, that's pretty obvious. But one of the cool things, and one of the things that we've noticed with our users, of course, is that users have bookmarks. Go figure, right? Users have brains. They type in URLs all the time. So wouldn't it be cool if you could automatically translate those URLs to an application proxy externally facing URL so they don't have to get on a VPN? Well, we've built that capability into our MyApp Secure Sign-In extension, which I conveniently do not have installed on Chrome. That's why this didn't work. However, if I launch Edge, and I do that same operation, the first thing I'll show you is I have the option installed, and if I click on the little gear item here, you can see that I have this company internal URL redirection feature. So this means that when I type in that same URL, we look up the mapping for that URL in our system, and it requires me to enter my password. I set up a conditional access policy. And it redirects me to the application. So I did not have to do anything to my bookmarks. Everything worked for me. The system works for me because I have used the MyApp Secure Sign extension to automatically change that URL. That's pretty cool, yeah? All right. The other thing you'll notice in this MyApp Secure Sign extension is that you can see all of your recently used applications, and you can launch and search for apps right here. So this is another example of people who are expecting these applications to be where they're doing work. You can also use this to get to the actual My Apps view as well, which will drill you to our My Apps web experience. So to do that, I can just click on this, and it'll bring me to myapps.microsoft.com. Now, of course, what's also cool about this particular Azure AD domain joined experience is that because I have domain joined this device, my password from Edge is already there. So I can launch apps just like that because I already have a secure credential to that organization. So now let's say that I'm moving on with my day and I'm going to Office. I'm going to Office because that's where I go to collaborate with users and work on documents and things of that nature. So let's see if our apps show up there. Well, look at this. This same list of applications are showing up in my recently used apps list. This is a new feature that we've been working on with the Office team that we just recently announced. I think they mentioned it on Tuesday in a session. And what's cool about this is that this also allows you to search for your applications right here. So look at this. I've got all of my Azure AD third-party applications in a search experience on Office, just like I have in my apps, just like I have in my MyApp Secure Sign extension, and I can launch those right here. So I can go to Salesforce, and I get federated single sign-on in a secure way to that application right from Office. And hey, do I have my phone? Let's see. And I've set up a conditional access policy, and let's approve that so I can actually get in. All right, there we go. So there you just saw step-up authentication, another cool feature of Azure AD. So now let's say I want to get more apps, right? There's several ways that I could do this. Of course, I could go to the Access panel itself and get more apps here, request them from people, do business delegation workflows like Mark had mentioned. But another interesting scenario is being able to get those applications down to the device itself, right? So let's imagine that I have the company portal installed, and I'm interested in seeing what my company has given to me. Well, hey, it looks like my company has published for me a number of different applications. Now, how I've actually set this up behind the scenes is very simple. What I've done is I've taken the user access URL for this application from the properties view in enterprise applications, and I've set it up as a client app in Intune. That allows this to be published on the company portal, and when I go to install the application, it will actually put it as a link in my start menu. I have to re-sign in here. Give me a sec. The cool thing about this is that this will enable you to get applications down to users in the closest possible way to where they start their day, which is right from their Windows experience. So when I click the install button here, what's going to happen is it's going to look into Intune, it's going to look at that particular application configuration, and it's going to publish a link straight down to my start menu, which you'll see showing up here in a moment. And just to show you the Add Apps experience in My Apps here, you can publish a similar list of applications here in the My Apps experience, which you can set up those business workflows that I mentioned. So you'll see that I've curated another list of applications here, and if I wanted to, I could have someone, in the department head for sales, for example, ensure that this person is able to, approve access before they're able to access the app. So let's see if this installs here in a moment. And there it is. So once I have it installed, I can just type Twitter into my start menu. There it is. I launch it, and I get that same single sign-on experience without having to do anything. And I can tweet just how awesome my IT admin group is. And look, yummy steaks. All right. So we are continuing our partnership with Office and Intune to build these experiences deeper and deeper into those platforms. We're also building a brand new My Apps experience that's going to be super cool and we're really excited about. And similarly, we would love your feedback about these end-user apps launching experiences. aadappfeedback@microsoft.com. We are listening. We would love to hear what you have to share. With that, I'm going to swap it back over to Mark.
Cool. So just to kind of recap the best practices here. So the first thing here is you want to, for authentication, please enable password hash sync. I'm going to talk about this again in the next session right after this, but also start using Seamless SSO, start a pilot. You can start migrating off Federation pretty easily. Next, lots of stuff here for SaaS apps. Start with ak.ms/migrate apps. We have our deployment plans, like start using this, and please include provisioning when you onboard a SaaS application. Next, operational insights. Again, we spent a lot of time here. There's a lot of stuff you can do to pull things from your environment and really help you that value add to the business. And then leverage this new foundation that you have, right? Now that we've got all this stuff set up, you can really start doing these amazing things. We can start blocking legacy authentication. We can make it so the end user experience is amazing. They don't actually hate IT. I know it's gonna sound weird, right? So you can start actually doing this. I think Adam had one last thing he wanted to talk about.
Yeah, so a lot of the fact that Mark and I here on stage is irrelevant. It really is, because behind the scenes, there's an entire development group and PM group that supports everything that we showed here. And I would love if you and all of us can give them a round of applause for all the hard work they did to put into this. Yeah, thank you. And the other thing I'll mention is that Mark and I really enjoy doing this, but it would not be possible without all of you. You guys make this solution possible. Your feedback is how we build this product. Your partnership in going on this journey with us gives us a lot of joy, and we're very grateful for that. So I'd like to give you guys a round of applause as well. Thank you for being such a great audience. And